Hello, everybody. Hi, my name is Wingee Sampaio, and I'm the Global Program Director of the Cartier Women Initiative. Today, I'm very, very honored to be joined by Rowan Gardner with us to talk about women entrepreneurs as a force for good. And so we're going to begin our talk quickly by sharing with you a bit about the Cartier Women Initiative and why we embarked on a journey of creating such an international program to empower women impact entrepreneurs. And then we're going to spend most of the time sharing Rowan's experience, actually, because she's a serial life science entrepreneur that is in the life science and technology pioneering fields. And so without further ado, I'm going to share with you my presentation a bit. Terrific. Great. So the vision of the Cartier Women Initiative is a world in which every woman entrepreneur driving social and environmental change can achieve her full potential. We are focused on trying to help reach UN Sustainable Development Goals, which we know are a tall order, needing about $5 to $7 trillion in support to reach these goals by 2030. We believe that gender equality can have a big part in solving these global challenges, and we need both men and women as part of the equation. Gender equality alone can boost global GDP by close to 26%, and we believe that supporting women impact entrepreneurs can be a big part of this equation. We have seen that the motivation for starting businesses in the entrepreneurship world a lot of times is to make a difference in the world, and this is true amongst both men and women. And more importantly, we know that the gender gap in social entrepreneurship is actually fairly small versus traditional businesses. So in a lot of social businesses, we see equal participation of women as well as men. And so because of that, we want to support more women to create opportunities for them to pursue businesses that create social and environmental change. Our program has been around since 14 years, so since 2006, and we are across 7 regions of the world. And each year we grant close to $1 million per year to these women impact entrepreneurs that are trying to solve one of the UN SDG goals. In our community, we have close to 200 fellows globally across 56 countries. Something really special this year is that we're launching a new Science and Technology Pioneer Award to specifically recognize and support the women entrepreneurs that are focused on the forefront of science and technological innovation. And this is what we're here to share with you today. We are hoping to shine a light on all of these impact-driven women entrepreneurs by providing financial, social, and human capital support. And we wanted to share with you a bit about what inspired us to create this new awards. So when we take a look back of the past 14 years across our 200 plus fellows, we had actually about 23 fellows who were in the category of Science and Technology Pioneer. And they ranged mostly in North America and South America, but also some in Europe. But we saw that we had an opportunity to really create this award on a global basis so that more women entrepreneurs who are in the forefront of science and technology can really come forward and be part of this overall global sisterhood of women impact entrepreneurs. When we take a look at the Science and Technology Pioneers that has been a part of our historical program, we found that actually many of them were focused on health and well-being issues, as well as sustainable city and communities, and also clean water and sanitation. And so amongst the Science and Technology Pioneer, there was definitely many who was trying to create a positive change in the world and could benefit from the resources of our program. I wanted to share with you 2 examples of women entrepreneurs who have been part of our program and what are they like. So one that is a big fond memory of mine is Margaret. And Margaret founded Ananda Device, and she's based in Canada, but it's actually originally from Brazil. Margaret, in her life's work around building science on doing research, she found that new drugs for neurological diseases were very expensive to develop and oftentimes were tested on animals. And actually, many of this drug testing had very little effects in humans. And so Margaret has dedicated her life's work around developing customized model of brain and nervous system tissue using organoids on a chip, and to hopefully accelerate drug development and reduce animal testing. Margaret was part of our fellowship program in the last year, and she has now grown her business significantly and has grown her business to close to 20 people in her membership of our team. Another example I wanted to share with you is Adriana Diaz, who's actually based in Mexico. Adriana created the company Tierra del Mon, and she is a Mexican that's 37 years old, and she's actually a mompreneur. She has found that the use of agrochemicals to produce mass crops has really sort of depleted the fertility of the soil and of the land for the farmers. And also, oftentimes, these agrochemicals were really poisoning the farmers and actually also making food unsafe for many people. And so she discovered this problem very much because her kids were actually allergic to many non-organic food, and yet to purchase organic food was very costly for most families. And so as a result, she started the company Tierra del Mon to develop a technology that relies on bacteria and fungi to rejuvenate plant and soil fertility, and in doing so, hoping to bring down and democratize the access to organic foods. These are just some stories of wonderful women science and technology pioneers that has been part of our program. And we hope that by creating this special new category just for them, that we would acknowledge the remarkable work of more of these women scientists and technologists. And so our call for application is actually open now. And so if you're a woman entrepreneur or know of a woman entrepreneurs who are doing innovative work in science and technology, please encourage them to apply to our program. All the details are on CartierWomenInitiative.com website. And if they were not a science and technology pioneer, but just an overall social impact entrepreneur, we would also encourage them to apply in the other 7 regional categories. So with that, I'm going to take a moment to have a great conversation with Rowan to share her experience as a woman impact entrepreneur and a serial life science entrepreneur.
Thank you, Wingee. I bet it was hard to choose just 2 examples of women science entrepreneurs, because there are really lots of them around the world doing great work, and I do hope a few more of them will apply to the science award that Cartier is launching this year. I'm looking forward to seeing all of those applications come in.
Yes, and we're so grateful, Rowan, for your help with us in supporting us in being part of our jury for first last year for the European region, and now for this new category of science and technology region.
So I'm looking forward to it. I'm sure it's going to be really tough, actually, reviewing all those applications. So anyone who's in the audience today, do find a moment to go over to the Cartier Awards website and have a look and do apply. You do have to apply to win it, and I for one will really enjoy reading your applications.
Yes, all of us do. So Rowan, maybe you could share with everyone a bit about how you started in science and technology and what led you to this interest, and tell us a bit that story.
So that's a big question, but I think there are some simple truths. So we are all products of our own experience. So I'm going to chalk some of it up to my father, who is a wonderful man. He was an engineer, and when he was he would sit around the breakfast table and help me with my physics homework and encourage me in science, and he never gave me the impression that women didn't belong in science and engineering. So I think it starts there. It starts with a childhood that I was in hospital a lot. I had various problems growing up as a child, and I came through sort of fascinated by human health and wanting to find ways of improving the quality of life for people around the world. And I studied biochemistry at Oxford, and after that, it was a long time ago, people, after that I became an entrepreneur, and I've been really, really fortunate that has been a really rewarding activity. I've had the opportunity to work with people who were leading the Human Genome Project. I have had the opportunity to work with people who gave Tim Berners-Lee the computer to write the internet on. So it's been remarkably inspiring to do this, and I consider myself incredibly fortunate. Yeah.
Oh, great. Wow. And what led you? I mean, there's many people who pursue science and technology, but they stay in, I guess, if you will, in the R&D phase, and they don't consider this entrepreneurship route. Was there a certain turning point in your journey that led you to choose, like, hey, you know what? I think I'm going to be an entrepreneur. Yeah.
Well, I guess when I started as an entrepreneur, it wasn't as cool as it is today. I think, entrepreneurship is much more accepted.
Mm-hmm.
I think entrepreneurship back in the early 90s, when I was involved with some of the university spin-outs of Oxford, it was kind of the thing your parents worried about. They would have rather you got a good job as in one of the big companies around the world, or were doing great research in science. I think part of it was I'm not a very patient person. So the process of research for me is something that is incredibly tough. I respect all of the academics around the world. I want things to work first time. I'm older now. I'm more realistic, but I knew that a career at the bench in science wasn't for me, and I was really interested in how our innovations came to business and were made into products that people could buy and use. And that was actually the transformative step of how ideas really had the impact of improving people's lives. So that's where I wanted to be. And I had the opportunity, partly by chance, a lot of these things are down to luck, to join a company called Oxford Molecular. And Oxford Molecular were developing software codes for the pharmaceutical industry to develop new drugs. So some of you may know about computational biology and chemistry. We were early pioneers in that field. And through that, I had the opportunity to open sales offices in the United States and participate in a business that listed on one of the stock exchanges, and saw that side of business and science. And I was truly fascinated by how you bring people together, the commercial process of taking an idea and turning it into a product, and delivering shareholder return. Because if you don't do that as well, you don't have a sustainable cycle of capital powering those businesses' growth. And I think I'm still a bit of a junkie for that. So I'm still sort of fascinated by startups in that space. Yeah.
Yeah, I think, it's interesting what you just shared. Remind me much about Margaret's experience, because Margaret of Ananda Device that I just mentioned earlier, she also shared that, she was doing many years of research, and she felt that the research being published was great, but it wasn't being translated into something tangible. And one of her motivation was to see really this work helping actual people. And so this is how she became an entrepreneur, and she in so many ways very humble, just like you, and have discovered, like, wow, there's so much of this leveraging business as a force for good that could bring a greater reach to the work. And I'm so glad you mentioned the sustainable business model part, because that is a really critical piece of impact entrepreneurship, that we also at Cartier really believe that if you don't build a business model that's financially sustainable, you won't get to sort of continuously deliver on that impact. So very important. Um,
Yeah,
yeah,
that's critical. That's the difference between business and projects.
yeah.
So, in academia, we apply for grants, and that money is given to us for a purpose. But that doesn't by itself take those ideas anywhere other than through publication. So,
Mhm.
a business is really the most common model, I think, of achieving impact.
Yeah. And how about, like, you've been involved with various different ventures. So tell us a bit about the serial nature of your experience also, because that was also very well unusual amongst entrepreneurs, but also especially amongst women entrepreneurs.
Yeah, so I think I'm slightly unusual in that my husband's an entrepreneur as well. So you know, we recognize that that kind of gives us a degree of I don't know, maybe we just need some counseling, Wingee, but we really you know, are serial entrepreneurs. I think we're on our seventh or eighth startup currently.
Wow.
And we met in that computational chemistry company, Oxford Molecular, many
Mm-hmm.
decades ago. What we don't always talk about is startups are really hard work. There's not a
Yeah.
lot of time for socializing, and he literally had
Mm-hmm.
the desk opposite me. That was how
Yeah.
I met my husband, and so that was a company that grew. We bought 7 US companies. So don't believe that only Silicon Valley is where companies grow. I sometimes will say when I'm being cheeky, you know, I've never been involved with a deal where I've bought more than 2 Silicon Valley companies on the same day. But that was part of a larger transaction, so we don't dwell on that. And so that company grew to be about a $1 billion company, um, based in the UK in the middle of the 1990s. And
Wow.
then after doing that, I co founded a business again with my husband and leading scientists from the European Bioinformatics Institute, whose director had run computing for CERN through that period where the web was being invented. And we recognized there was an opportunity to build what are now sort of federated data integration systems, really an early form of cloud computing, grid computing, and we did that at the end of the 1990s. We raised money. I had the experience of what happens when it goes wrong
Mm-hmm.
with your investors. So we grew that company. We had 2 opportunities very early in its history to be acquired with really very strong businesses. And the board didn't agree. So the board sacked the CEO, who was my husband. And then they turned to me and said, well, your job's now um, untenable. So we need you no longer to be in this business. So that
Wow.
was the moment where I sort of turned to them and said, well, I could divorce him. If I divorce him, can I keep my job? Um, and we had a bit of a pause because they hadn't asked the lawyers that question. But you know, I was being very naughty when I said that. Um, and so that business wasn't a success, but it was a great idea. And in fact, in the last 6 weeks, we've had 2 businesses in Europe who have been funded doing very similar um, uh, trying to address a very similar challenge to that one. So,
Mhm.
you know, that tells me that we were on the right track. And then I was involved with a business called BioLauncher, and we were really doing a little bit about that Cartier is trying to do. We were working with early stage entrepreneurs to help them with strategy and access to funding.
Mhm.
And I worked on that, did that for about 12 years. So I think
Mhm.
we worked with about 35 companies, all sorts of things, pre-implantation, um, diagnostic testing for um, in vitro fertilization businesses. So phenomenal impact that you're kind
Wow.
of making with those kinds of technologies. And had the privilege of working with really talented entrepreneurs who were really committed to seeing their innovations reach the market. So wonderful experience. And then I uh, made a very small investment in a water technology business. So this business was trying to combine hygiene but make the food hygiene business more efficient. And we felt that if we could scale the technology, we could take a lot of energy out of hygiene in food. So right now, we're all living through the consequences of poor hygiene in the food
Mhm.
chain. So that's how COVID-19 has come out and infected all of us. And you know, one of the big problems the world faces is populations growing. We use about 70% of the world's fresh water to grow our food and about 30% of the energy. And if we could find a way of cleaning our food factories using less energy and less water, that would help meet the challenge of doubling food output, which we need to do by 2050 to feed an ever more affluent world. So I wrote a small check as an investor to that business, and at the same time started Precision Life, which is a business I've just started to re-engage with in the last few weeks, having completed a CEO role with that water business. And there we are, developing technologies, again, this obsession I have with life science data, to understand disease at a very high degree of resolution, so that we can understand why, Wingee, your experience of a disease might be different to mine. And therefore the treatment that would benefit you would be different to me. And we're just starting to work that up. We've just completed a very large analysis of severe COVID patients, which is up on medRxiv if anyone has got an interest. And we're beginning to find what are the risk factors now that predispose people to have very severe outcomes around COVID. So it's part of the tool set that will help us put this monstrous infection back in its box and allow us all to get back to work, I think, which I'm sure we all want to do.
Wow.
So that's some of the things I've been doing.
Oh my gosh! It sounds like you have lived a bit of a life of a cat with all of these different ventures, and they all seem to be related, but also quite different in each of the experience, in terms of functionally also. So it looks like we have about 5 more minutes left. What might be some advice you have for women interested in this direction?
So I always say this, that entrepreneurship is a full contact sport. So, you know, if you want to do this, you have to commit to doing it and step forward to doing it. So don't worry about failing. Don't worry about not being perfect. Start. That's my first piece of advice. My second piece of advice is realize you can't do it yourself. So you're going to need to ask questions. You need to find advisors. You need to find people who will join you on this journey. And so reaching out to organizations or your colleagues who you trust for advice is really critical in being successful. So those are the 2 steps I would always say to entrepreneurs: is start, but find your advisors. And Cartier, of course, would be, and applying to the Cartier program would be a very good thing to do, I think, as a way of turbocharging your advisory network.
Yes, yeah, very much so. I think, Rowan, I couldn't have said it better. I think it's, oftentimes we find especially amongst women entrepreneurs, but I don't know, also perhaps also relevant for male entrepreneurs, is the hesitation to ask for help. And, we as a program are really designed to create all sorts of resources and mobilize it together for you. But ultimately, you have to be the one who asks and make the effort to capture and realize these resources. And so that's an excellent point. Okay, well, it sounds like we're coming on to the end, and I wonder if we might have any questions from the audience. I'm not completely sure. Let me just check really quick.
I think we don't have any questions at the moment, Wingee. So
Okay.
I think if anyone is continuing to think about what's next, has a great idea, please, do have a look at the Cartier award site.
Yeah.
And, there are other opportunities out there for women entrepreneurs to be supported. But if you have ideas that can improve the world, share them.
Yes, for sure. Yeah, and feel free to visit the CartierWomenInitiative.com website for details on the application to our program. And again, our call for application ends in end of July. Also, in general, the site is terrific for resources for social impact entrepreneurs and women entrepreneurs in general. So to the extent that our program is not a fit for you, we hope that at least some of those resources can be beneficial for you, and know that there's many others doing the same work in making the world a better place via businesses. Okay, terrific. Great. Well, thank you, Rowan, so much for your time today. I'm so glad to have you to be part of this inspirational talk for everyone.
Oh, it's been a pleasure, Wingee, and I've really enjoyed working with you and the wider team and the phenomenal network that you have built over the last 14 years. So thank you as well for the opportunity.
Thank you so much. All right. Thank you, everyone. Bye-bye.
Bye.